All right, guys, here is another live stream for you, but this time I need to invite a person. So let's wait. I just sent the link, and here we go. So, as you can well imagine, Paul is going to join us. Hey, Paul, can you hear me well?
I can, Stan. How you doing?
Great, at last. How are you doing?
Not bad. I'm kind of like just slowly getting into the swing of things today because I had a party with some students last night as a kind of farewell party because I'm leaving Moscow next week
Oh,
forever, kind of thing.
okay. All right, so
But moving,
you have a lot on your plate these days, it looks like it, right?
yeah, like so. I'm just kind of making sure no one can see the mess behind me because I'm packing. So
Yeah, that would
like,
be my next question. Like, are you holed up somewhere, or what is happening? You know?
yeah. So basically, it's just like as much as I love Moscow, I want to try somewhere different. So I'm actually on Tuesday, I'm moving to Kazan, kind of
Mm,
thing. So
for
yeah,
good, or just
for
like a
good.
trip? For good. So you're moving
Yeah.
out.
Yeah,
Wow. Well, again, we'll talk about this occasion later, but because I think it's
sure,
time to
man.
talk about the theme, yeah, of today's live stream. First of all, even though I think Paul does not need any introduction, I will still mention a few things because I think that I've been online friends with Paul for like, I don't know, 7 years. Yeah, I think
Something
so.
like that. It's been a long time.
Right. And he is one of those people who inspires and always spreads knowledge and infects us with English. So, Paul is the owner of the Paul Newson Center for Learning Languages, right? Native
Yeah,
speaker, British speaker of English, for those who still don't know, and someone who is the real deal, really. Not just a native
that's
speaker,
sweet.
but someone who talks, who practices what they preach, as they say, right? So, this is what matters. And today we got quite a spicy topic, right? What is the topic, Paul?
We're dealing with like the dangers of idioms and the sort of ways of doing them right because it's something that you and me have in common. You
Right.
know, when I was like following your community, I was like out of many non-native speakers who try to teach idioms, it's like treading dangerous water. And you're one of the very few that does it right. So when I look through the idioms that you present, I'm like, yeah, we use that. Yeah, very common. And I'm like, rah, kind of thing. So for me, you're my guru when it also comes to online teaching as well. So the respect is mutual, my friend. But yeah, it's like there's a lot of things we can talk about. I think we can talk about how we really got into this. Because I have a lot of personal qualms with idioms, how they're taught, and especially when people ask me certain questions. Because I can actually give some background information about my linguistic sort of struggle and how I made mistakes as well, and why I'm trying to put it right. So basically,
Mhm.
I learned German in England, university and linguistics, and spent some time in Germany.
Mhm.
It was again a nice idiom, a shock to the system. When it's going to be full of them today, full of them. It was a shock to the system when I was studying like the clappers, like just constantly like trying to absorb all that vocabulary, learning list of idiomatic expressions in German,
Mhm.
hundreds of them. Get to Germany, all I heard was, we don't use that. We don't say it like that. That's like 200 years old. We prefer this instead. And it was like a kick in the guts because I felt that I'd wasted so much time learning something that's just not useful. But again, it was good to be taught correctly. And so when I came to Russia and I started teaching English, I understood that there's something inherently wrong with this desire to learn as many idioms as possible,
Mhm.
uh, and taking a kind of black and white approach to them, which we discussed yesterday, which we can talk about. There's a major black and white approach to idioms, and a lot of them are used incorrectly. Some people try to overuse them. Some people think that you shouldn't use idioms in IELTS writing, or like I've even had discussions like this on my community, and it's just like a pile of rubbish. It really is. And so there's a lot of stigma associated to using idioms. And I think the first thing like, if you want to give some background information, how you came into teaching, I'd really love to know because again, you teach a lot on your Instagram channel and VK page, etc.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, really great to know where it came from with you because you're speaking from experience. You see, pretty much the same with me. I mean, before I started doing my major in foreign languages and translations,
Mm-hmm.
I was already kind of self-taught for the most part. And what I've learned from, and the people I've learned from, were native speakers of movies or reality shows, YouTube, yeah, because it was like
Yeah.
at the big time at that time. And I thought, I mean, it kind of came naturally for me. I never thought that those were even idioms, you know, just learning it like
Hmm.
this chunk-based language. And only then, when I got into uni, yeah, started studying this as my future profession, I was like, oh, okay, so that's the thing. Yeah, it's important to kind of know your way around, how to explain it, how to teach it, yeah,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But I've also come to realize that when we teachers teach phrases and idioms, sometimes we have it backwards when it comes to the definition,
Hmm.
right? So I think it's a good way to start the live stream, which is to ask you guys watching what you think an idiom is in your book, which is also an idiom. Like, what do you think includes idiom? What do they include? Are they proverbs, sayings, or like fixed expressions, or what? Yeah. So
Yeah.
please that. Like, what's an idiom for you? Because since I'm also like, you know, in this profession, right? I have a degree. I learned in my phraseology class and lexicology class that when we talk about idioms, we actually talk about phraseology, right?
Yes.
Which includes phrasal verbs, collocations,
Yeah.
combinations,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Proverbs, sayings, but also binomials, right? What else?
Binomials as well. Absolutely.
Right. So, and obviously, it makes sense to say that idioms are an integral part of
Yep.
English, right? For sure. And of
I
course,
completely agree.
right, English is permeated. Yeah, idioms are like English, yeah, is permeated with idioms, right? So,
Mhm.
what do you think
Apparently,
is the
there's
greatest?
25,000 of them.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah, that's a
25,000
lot.
approximately. That's a lot.
Yeah, we have a whole life of learning, you know, and a lifetime of learning them for sure. So the question
Yeah.
for you guys, what are idioms for you? What do they include? Proverbs, phrasal verbs, or what?
Mentality, history. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Are you getting questions?
I can see them. Yeah. I can see them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Includes mentality, history, for sure. But
It
what do
does.
we mean by idioms? Proverbs, sayings, I don't know, fixed expressions, word combinations, collocations, you know? That's what we're asking. Are they
Yeah.
idioms or they're different?
Hmm. Uh-huh.
You know,
Yeah.
and while they're typing in their answers, my question is for you, Paul.
Yes,
Uh,
mate.
I suggested the idea, but you worded it. You worded the theme of today's live stream. What did
Hmm.
you mean by the dangers exactly?
Oh,
All
the
right.
dangers. Okay, guys, look at the camera. The danger is this. Okay, that's the danger. English idioms in use. Is it back? It's probably backwards. I'm not sure. I see it
It is.
backwards. English idioms in use. Well, it doesn't work. No.
It is.
It's a money maker. Nothing more. Basically.
Yeah,
It's
treading
like
on thin
yeah, I
ice.
know. It's very controversial. It's because the reason is I actually did a series of videos on this book. I wanted to film each page, and I've got them stored on my computer. But half of the video, each video, is me saying, "Don't use it. Don't use it. Don't use it.
I remember
Don't use it."
those series. Hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, the dangers are as follows. First of all, there's a black and white approach. It's like a lot of people think that if an idiom is found in a dictionary, or if they see it once, then it must be widespread. And it's not. It really doesn't mean much. So that's the first point, because
Hmm.
again, I sort of try to rely on, even as a native speaker, when I teach, I never sort of try to think, well, this is what I personally use. I try to think, what do I hear around me? So when I'm talking to my friends, my family, you know, again, like you say, watching TV, YouTube videos, I try to pick up on the frequency of some particular idioms. So those ones that appear very often, well, I'm going to teach them because they're useful. So if there is like one which you often see written down in a book, like to paint the town red, I mean, how often do you hear that in among native speakers? It's like very, very rare. Kind of thing. And again, used specifically. The second danger, which is worth mentioning, which is very interesting, is again, books are guilty of this, and also online dictionaries. We mentioned this yesterday. A lot of the online dictionaries, even though they sort of have some algorithms which are supposed to take example from online sources, sometimes the definitions are really, well, the definitions are correct, but the examples given are very questionable, because it's like I've even sometimes sent some to my native friends, and they say like, we would never use this, like it just sounds weird. And so then students who don't know better would actually say, well, that's the example, I'm going to teach it to my students. So they come to us and I'm like, sorry, you were taught wrong, you know. And then it's kind of a shock to the system. And so what have I been learning then? Well, I can't rely on online dictionaries, then what can I rely on? And then the thing which adds to this, like adding fuel to the fire, idiom, is like a lot of, especially with social media, a lot of Instagram channels, VK channels, Facebook, they teach idioms and they create some examples that are just completely false. Like we talked yesterday about a bone to pick. So bone to pick is like called an immobile idiom, except you can intensify it, like you said as well. Like you can say, I have a slight bone to pick with you. I have a major bone to pick with you. And it would only be used just like that. You wouldn't even use it with a future aspect. You wouldn't use it in a past perfect. You wouldn't do it in a conditional. It would be so wrong to say, if you do that again, I will have a bone to pick with you. It's like, no, it's just, but books like this and say online sources will give such examples, and they're wrong. Do you see what I mean? For the purpose of giving examples, to create context. And that comes down to the next point as well. I'll shut up in a second, because a lot of idioms are spoken, right? A huge number are. And like you've got your written ones, your spoken ones, and many books, like say these ones, never actually differentiate between which ones are spoken and which ones are written. So when I mark CAE and CPE essays, some students throw in idioms. I'm like, no, we can't do that. And there's just not enough information about them. And a lot of these social media, Instagram channels give wrong information as well. So basically, I feel sorry for learners. They're left in a state of limbo. You know, it's like, well, what's right? What am I supposed to be looking for? You know, how do I understand if it's used or not? And so what happens if then the student can't find what they call the translation equivalents in their own language? They're quite unlikely to use it in English.
Right, which brings up the question of language exposure, right?
Yeah.
When you're saying I'm left in this state of limbo, which means I have not enough information on whether they're used, where, who with, what the register is, what the appropriate is, right? By the way, before we move on, we have a few answers here. Anna says, idioms are word combinations, right? Well, words change their original meaning to form a new one. Correct. Idioms are not just proverbs or sayings, you know, like in Russian, язык такие вот ведет. And that's why we might think, oh, you know, idioms are like, you know, those old-fashioned things you don't want to use and only like elderly people use. BS, right? BS. Of course, there are phrases that are used by the elderly only, right? Or by the younger generation, but it doesn't mean that they're not used. But speaking of language exposure, what I've learned is that, first of all, it is a lifelong process. Each time I watch YouTube, especially because this is where the raw English comes, right? In action. And I watch reality shows or listen to podcasts or talk even to you. I get to learn a lot of interesting stuff. Not even phrases, but wordings, like ways of things we wouldn't be able to produce because we're not native speakers. For example, one of them would be, instead of saying, you need to get used to it, you might hear someone say, it takes a bit of getting used to, right? So
yes, exactly. It's so common.
Right.
So common.
So, and we don't get to speak this way because we have to learn it first. We have to internalize it. And that's the problem. So it answers one of the questions, by the way, that we have here that you sent to us. Thank you so much, guys. For Paul and I, someone is asking, like, how do I know that an idiom is a frequent one? Just watch stuff, explore, create your own virtual dictionary of idioms. Like, you know, Anna's dictionary of idioms, Stan's dictionary, Paul's, but, you know, with Paul, he's a force to be reckoned with. So, I mean, probably not the best example. What do you have to say on exposure, by the way?
Yeah, because I would say that's the thing. When you're kind of like a lower level student, say up to say maybe like, so I could say low level, like B1, and then you're kind of moving on to B2. That's when you've got to start moving away from your typical textbooks. Because again, I even feel some of those have been written in a very artificial way for the purpose of keeping things simple. I'm quite anti-textbook for a lot of them. And it really is then about being exposed to real authentic sources. Now, when I teach my CAE and CPE students, I say to them, just apart from writing essays and attending the speaking classes and doing some interactive practice, watch your documentaries, watch your blogs, your vlogs, whatever. Watch your podcasts, because like the podcast, one of my favorites called the Ricky Gervais Show, where they're just having chats with each other about stupid things, and you just hear the same idioms appear again and again and again. That's the thing. And if like someone was going to read Beowulf or like some kind of like Shakespeare plays, I've learned idioms from Macbeth. Like probably not very useful.
Um,
You
Maybe
know,
the world is your oyster is a good one to know for sure.
that's a good one. The world is your oyster. Some have stood the test of time. But yeah, it really is about kind of, even if you sort of went through a book like this and
Hmm.
actually learned, say, half of them, which is fine. I would definitely say that you've got to get used to real sources because it's not even just about idioms. It's about building your skills and your fluency
Mm.
and learning vocabulary in general. Like what is real? Because I'm sure like you have the same issue with me that like a part of my job is not just about teaching English. It's about like correcting it, like undoing it
Mm-hmm.
and building it up right again. That's the thing. I spend a lot of time doing that. So no, it's not like that. It's not like this. This is how we do it, kind of thing. And students say, "Well, I spent my time learning." I'm so sorry, And so, yeah, it's completely about exposure. And I think one of the problems is that like there's an imposter syndrome like attitude among many students who think that like I won't understand. It's going to be hard. I won't be able to concentrate. I'd rather not do it.
Mm.
And they've really got to get over that and just sit down in front of the TV or the computer and just stare at it for 15 minutes, listening attentively. And it's like when they hear the idiom, because like, even when I was learning German, like I'm sure it happens to you with English, you've been watching something. I know that. I remember that. I remember that. I've heard it again. And you start
Yeah.
using it. That's the thing. You really do actually pay attention to what you hear. Sometimes it comes up as a surprise as well. It's like, oh, it does exist kind of thing. And so it's like, the thing also to be wary of as well is like answering the question about trying to where to learn frequent idioms. Again, also with native speakers, we have to be careful because I know many native speakers who teach English in a way as like I mentioned earlier. That's what I use, so that's what 300 million people use. And it's not right.
Yeah.
Yes, because some people have their own personal taste. There might be some person from England who's some like inbred like with their cousin aristocratic kind of person who uses like rather archaic idioms because they're in ooh la la, and it's like no one else speaks like that except them and their cousins that they're married to. So basically, yeah, it's really honestly, apart from listening to the native, it's just about TV podcasts regularly, like every day.
Let's do a quick Q&A then. A literary book or a book on psychology, which one would you choose to learn idioms from when reading?
When reading a book on psychology or a literary book,
No.
for reading.
Okay, a TV series or a movie?
TV series, there's more of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, they talk more, and it's mostly about like casual talking conversation. Movies are mostly like about...
It depends on the genre, though, doesn't it? I mean, if it's like a TV series like Mandalorian or something, or like I don't know, Vikings, I'll be like, I think it's like it's scripted in a certain way to have some kind of stylistic effect. I would do something modern.
Exactly, like maybe like again a cliche example is Friends. Yeah, at least Friends.
Yeah.
They have really good phrases there that you can pick up. And most importantly, functional language. And by the way,
yes.
What I've noticed about us non-natives speaking English is that we do not know our way around functional language at all. We don't know how to ask a server at a restaurant, like what to ask, what phrases they use, right? Or, I don't know, asking around or anything.
It's true. Very true.
See? And
very
that's
true.
why I find myself also thinking, like, how do I say that? That's why on my channel, I usually have this, what's the English for, like, what's the English for katishki, the lint, yeah, on your, like, whatever. What's the English for, I don't know, parizartejot, because it's cold, like, because we would say, oh, you can see my, I don't know, my steam is coming out in my mouth. That's what we would say, but it's wrong. You would say, I can see my breath, right? Or something like that. So see, by the way, Artyom says Twitter is really handy when it comes to understanding where this particular idiom is used, outdated or not, by who, and so on. Would you agree? Would you agree that Twitter is also a good way to like explore content?
I'm actually, I never used Twitter, but I can imagine it does have some uses. Again, like people are kind of writing. If you see the same idiom appear again and again, then sure, why not? Then use it. I think like many sources can be extremely useful. Twitter, I mean, even when people write things on Facebook, again, it's definitely written English because people need to understand one thing. Even with what they see on Twitter, it's not spoken; it's written. It's really, really difficult to transcribe spoken English into written form. So to absolutely imitate it is very, very difficult. So I would use Twitter, and even when you read like loads and loads of books, whatever the genre, the same idioms will appear again and again, like written form. So like if I was reading some kind of let's just say like application letters because I'm preparing like a lesson on it or something like that, how to write, such letters, then I'd probably read about 20. There'd be so many idioms that would appear again and again. So, well, I'm going to use those because they're frequent. But again, they're not spoken. That's the thing. Spoken English, it's really about you've got to watch stuff.
So the conclusion is, with this question, is that we should always mind the register. We're supposed to create our own virtual dictionary of the idioms that we pick up from books or whatever. But again, here comes this kind of loaded question. You mentioned this idioms in use book that is like kind of useless, you said, right? It begs the question, how come is it useless if first it was written by native speakers, right? Second of all, it's Cambridge or Oxford, those prominent sources, of wisdom. How would you explain that? Well, I mean,
right. Okay. I wouldn't say it's completely useless. I mean, it's not as good as people think. I mean, again, when you kind of go through, I just turn to one random page. It's like a dog with two tails. It's just, it basically means to be very happy. We never say that. Then also on the same page, we've got like, for example, to bring someone down a peg or two, which we do use. And that's quite common. So there are ones that we do use. But like here, with like to be brought down a peg or two. Here's the example. It says, "Anna's so arrogant. She needs to be brought down a peg or two." Okay, so even from that, if you really had no idea what that idiom means, she's so arrogant, she needs to be brought down a peg or two. It's like, what does that mean? Killed? She needs to be slapped, like
a peg, right?
Yeah, it's like
failed or what?
So it doesn't give. So the thing is, it doesn't give you kind of much context. So for example, I just recently did a speaking club. It was really successful, and I actually try to be as close as possible to sort of transcribe spoken English into written form, and like the entire paragraph contextualized any idiom. So I would, in this particular example, I would say, like, Anna's so arrogant, she's got her head in the clouds, and we need to bring her back down to earth. Because she thinks so highly of herself, so we need to bring her down a peg or two. It's back to reality, back to normality. So that's what I would do to give that kind of context. You see what I mean? But again, even in like some of these, it's like what was it I read the other day? To hit the roof. We discussed this. There was in one idioms book. It says like I got home late yesterday and my father hit the roof. And it's like. It's again, it's just not even used in the past. It's like, it can be, but naturally and most often it's used in a conditional. Like, when my father finds out, he's going to hit the roof. If my father finds out, he's going to hit the roof. That is like the sort of most common way to use it. And again, these books often don't do that because they say why they're a bit kind of useless. Not completely. They don't give enough context. That's for sure. Because again, it's like the book Murphy's. Everyone's completed Murphy's. Why isn't everyone's grammar perfect then? Why if it's that good and everyone can complete the book, why have they mastered English grammar? Why haven't people who completed this mastered idioms and used them correctly? There's something inherently missing.
Doesn't exist. Perfection does not exist. You see?
That doesn't exist as well. But I think that on one hand, we can argue that there isn't enough context. There aren't enough real examples or like explanation of, is it archaic? Is it modern? Is it spoken? Is it written? Is it used sarcastically? Is it used for emphasis? Because if they were to be like this would be the size of an encyclopedia. And no one would buy. That's the problem. And so it really is about trying to kind of create the golden middle. But it's not bad, but it still doesn't do the job. That's the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, there's this kind of mental checklist or like mental series of stages that you have to go through with a word or phrase, to get it internalized. For example, first you know. Right? So it's good for noticing this book. Then retrieval. Next time you are trying to remember, you try to retrieve it out of your memory. So what you do is to do the gap fill. It does the trick for sure. This book has this. But Then comes the creative use, where you're supposed to just learn how it's used. Where can I use it
Yeah.
in that context? Can I say it about a person or a thing or an animal or what? Right? It doesn't do the
Yeah.
trick. Then vocab depth. When I'm starting to use it, who is going to check whether I'm correct?
That's
The
the
teacher
problem.
who uses the same book, really? Right?
Mm.
Obviously, quite debatable. Then we go to this recycling thing, right? Okay, we can recycle, but recycling is just not just about asking questions or trying to say, like, saying, what's the English for "у меня тебя зуб," to have a bone to pick with? Ah, okay, job done. Of course not, right? You're
No,
supposed to make
definitely not.
sure that you come across those contexts where you can see the phrase in progress, right? So that's the
Hmm.
problem. So that's
Yep.
my bone to pick with dictionaries and books like that,
Yep.
because what I do, here's like my little kind of story with phrases, the way I learn them and teach them, and when I make videos, what I do is I have this list of very well-known resources. English. Do people say?
Mhm.
Twitter. Do people say it's based on Reddit, the forum? Yeah, like this raw English,
Mhm.
flawed at the same time.
Mhm.
Google Books, Newgram Viewer. Yeah, I will publish the list after this live stream for
Mhm.
those who don't know. And what I do is I literally do a deep dive into this,
Yes. Yeah.
with this phrase. Yeah. And I start exploring. Yeah, it takes time, guys. It does. But if you really want to know your way around a phrase, how come can you not like do that? Right? You have to get
Yeah. Yeah.
started.
You're absolutely right, because again, is the thing is that firstly, that's a lot of work, and a lot of people aren't
Mhm.
ready to invest a lot of time into like maybe one or two idioms. That's the thing. And it's really about like saying that if you really want to move beyond this whole black and white syndrome, you've actually got to invest the time in doing it. Because
Mhm.
again, if you don't have access to a native speaker, they are expensive. There's no denying that. And like, again, not all are great teachers. It's about being a good teacher in general, Russian or English, it doesn't matter. But the more you try to find examples online from various sources, it's like you kind of narrow down your search. You sort of narrow down the meaning. So, like, okay, they're saying the same thing from different sources. I think I've got the right idea now. Rather than just taking one like example at face value by
Mhm.
typing into Cambridge Dictionary this example, I'm going to use it then. Not always. Sometimes yes, but
Right.
a lot of the time no. But look at various examples and kind of see similarities that they all kind of match. And then again, if you're not sure, ask someone who knows what they're doing.
That's what I do.
That's the thing.
I sometimes ask you, I ask a bunch of my American friends. So my search is not complete after I have explored all of these. I need to make sure I see and hear them then, and only then
Yeah,
can I start using them. So I'm a
yeah.
language nerd for sure. I can everyone can attest to that. Yeah, those who follow me. But that's
Mhm.
what I think make me stand out, because I'm always trying to make sure the phrase is used. It's like up to scratch.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
But
Absolutely. No, I completely agree. And that's one of my qualms. I can honestly say, one of the things on VK that irritates me was when, like, sometimes when I make posts, I haven't made many in the past 2 months. I've been really busy, but I'm getting back to it. And someone said, I disagree. I found this in a dictionary. It's like, well done. It's like, you do realize I'm British, right? And like, it is my language. I speak it. And I'm not making it up when I say that that's not right. It's like, moving from idioms a while ago, I made this post on at the lesson saying at the lesson is wrong. It doesn't exist in English, but it's a bad habit, like a
right.
fossilized habit. But it was basically people trying to move beyond this to say, like, you've got to actually have faith in what someone's telling you, or don't take something at face value, question what you see and hear. So, like, for example, if you kind of come across let me just kind of find a random idiom here, like, for
Mhm.
example, like,
Sure.
uh, like, I mean, these books have actually got a bit better. No, I won't use that one.
Don't cherry
Uh,
pick.
yeah, I'm trying to cherry pick. Uh, actually, some of the ones that this is I've got the wrong, the easy one. Okay, like shrouded in mystery, let's take that. I mean, it's something like you kind of see maybe in one source and think that sounds nice. I'm going to write it down in my vocab list. And like you could say, like, he's a person shrouded in mystery. So, and like, which you could say, but you might, or a student might come to me and say, do you know what I think about my partner in the class? They're a person shrouded in mystery. It's like, Jesus, since when did you jump out of a Charles Dickens book? Kind of thing. And it's like, because it's so kind of colorful and poetic. I would say you wouldn't say that. You'd actually say he's a very mysterious person. Yeah, like very mysterious. You know, you wouldn't say like, "Oh, my Nikita shrouded in mystery," because someone takes it at face value. You've got to research more, and you look at the context and say, "Yeah, is there something very literal about it, very kind of colourful that you would find in some kind of literary book, like a fictional book or something?" And so the funny thing, it also applies to every aspect of learning English. It's about like really, really kind of double checking and not take it on a face value. Really, it happens too much these days. But then I understand learners because, you know, like, who are you supposed to believe? Because maybe 20 years ago or 15 years ago, before the advent of social media, we tend to see linguists and, you know, prominent teachers as the voice of reason. But now we're moving into a culture we have already where it's popularity trumps what's right. So quite often you can get someone with a massive like Instagram channel, but like they're covered in lipstick or whatever, and you know they've got the tits out, and it's like, I'm going to teach you. Oh, they must be correct. They must be correct because they're sexy, kind of thing. It's like, no, it's completely wrong. And so like I've had to spend so much time putting stuff together because I had messages from you. Oh, but this person who's got like 1 million followers says it's correct, and what? You know, it's like maybe they pay for followers, maybe like they're bots. You don't know what's behind it, you know. You don't know, like there's so much more to think about here. And so the problem that you and me have got is that we're sort of trying to fight this popularity with fact and reason. And it's a very, very tough battle to convince people that this is wrong and we are right, kind of thing. You know, it's very tough to prove that. And it's not in an arrogant sense that we're saying that, but it is, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the operative word is just do a little bit more exploring with it, yeah? Until you actually post it. Because for sure, if those idioms, like, you know, you come across them in books or videos or documentaries, of course they exist, but to what extent are they used in casual speech? And again, Lada is correct to mention that you have just to factor the register in, yeah? Just factor it in.
Yeah, completely.
Like I'm talking to Paul, I can use any words. Even I can even cuss, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, maybe not to this degree. But if I were to talk to a professor, of course I would use the formal register, which is also good.
Absolutely.
Right? But at the same time, I think it's important to make sure that you know this fine line between formal English, informal English, casual English, bookish English. By the way,
absolutely.
To pick up on the on one of the questions that, by the way, my experience with Shrouded in Mystery is that I watch a lot of Netflix with this feature called audio description. It's actually for the you know, like visually impaired people, but I use it to my own advantage. I can see how, you know, actions and emotions are described in this beautiful, precise English, you know? And I am like, wow, cool. So not only can you say like trudge, but also trap, for example, like mosey, yeah, American English, or whatever. I'm just saying. And this is where I get to hear this collocation a lot, shrouded in mystery. For example, mist shrouds the mountain, something like that, you know? So that's what they say. Of course it's bookish, yeah? But we know that is the register we're talking about. Or when I watch a documentary about Egypt, for example, I always get to hear them say like, you know, this ancient Egypt history is shrouded in mystery, something like that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the construction of the pyramids is shrouded in history. No one knows how it came about. Exactly. Absolutely.
And then the word shroud itself is this cloth, yeah, that was used for wrapping dead bodies. Yeah,
that's right.
It's also good to know, by the way, when you learn an idiom, it answers one of the other questions, like how do I make those idioms stick? Yeah, it also in answer to your question. If you explore the little meaning of a phrase or a word, it will give you more understanding of it, right? Like you'll be like, so shroud as in this kind of cloth, right? So it's shrouded. So it gives you more idea, right? For sure.
Absolutely.
By the way,
it definitely helps. Yes, mate.
Yeah. Then Anastasia says, no, keeping it simple is not okay. Idioms make our speech sound much more beautiful. For sure, but it all depends on the context, right?
It does. The context is key. You know, the funny thing is, I know it's like weird to say. I mean, all these years I've been teaching, it's really been in the past 5 years that I've paid special attention to context more than ever before. You know, especially like in my CAE and CPE courses when it comes to writing. I've even developed a complete dislike of inversion. You know, I've developed such a dislike towards it. When students write in a discursive CPE Part 1 essay, seldom have I, it's like, no, don't use that kind of thing. And it's like, but it's nice grammar. No, that doesn't matter if it's nice. It's too poetic and it doesn't suit a discursive context. You would never use like those adverbials like seldom, rarely, hardly, had I, whatever, in a discursive essay. Maybe if you were writing a kind of epic or you're writing maybe a sarcastic review, you could. But otherwise, you just wouldn't do it. And it's the same thing. So with idioms, when people look up idioms, just because they hear it once, as we've sort of conclude, go beyond just a dictionary definition. You find 10 different sources, like double check its context, double check the usage, just to make absolutely sure. Because again, students have got to move beyond, as we've said, this whole black and white notion that like, if it's written, I can use it. Kind of thing, or if I see it, it's widespread, and many people surprisingly believe this, and it's so wrong.
But by the way, you also mentioned this fact that we don't question things. We just come across a certain phrase in the textbook, or we hear it somewhere from a TV series, and we're like, yeah, sure, I will use it because it will make me sound more natural and advanced. So it brings up two questions. First, who said that being advanced means always spicing up, like each and every sentence, is supposed to be spiced up with some idioms? It's not that, for sure. I think proficiency, by the way, I've never taken exams, but I know for sure that proficiency means knowing a lot, but being smart how to use it.
Right? Absolutely correct. It's what I call the less is more policy.
Yeah.
Less is more. It's like, rather than throwing in words like moribund or phantasmagoric or anti-establishment, it's like moribund. Yeah, on the point of death, it means. And
I heard it once only in the documentary.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those words that English people know that they use like to show off. Do you know the word moribund? Like, no one's ever heard of it. It means at the point of death. And
is all.
Yeah, exactly. And see, like when sometimes I've had some students write essays and they throw God knows how many idioms at them. Like even the other day, like, I run of the mill, and it's like, you're not going to use that in your CP writing. It's a bit weird. And sometimes the best essays which get like an A are the ones which tone down the English a bit. They're still got to be advanced and, have topical vocabulary, functional vocabulary, but it's about flowing from start to finish. And then it makes complete sense and it's natural rather than sort of trying too hard. So when sometimes some students I've met and I had them who basically throw every idiom they know at me in every sentence, it's just like, it just sounds so unnatural, and so it's better just again to sort of follow the notion less is more. And being proficient, being advanced doesn't mean that you know 25,000 idiomatic expressions. I prefer you to use just 100, but use them properly, in the right context, to have that sort of natural way of communicating. Even in my speaking club that just finished, like you look at the English and there is nothing that would say, this is like academic or this is like so ooh la la English. It's kind of just general standard English. But the key to fluency is the natural combination of idioms, expressions in a kind of logical order that just like, it's like a puzzle coming together. And so when my students were recycling the language that I taught them in the context, they just suddenly sounded like native because they were using everything in the right order. Like even with the idioms that were given in like specific context, you see, and so that's what it is. So even like with idioms, like if someone then talking about trying too hard, if someone's going to learn all the idioms in here off by heart, I mean, a lot of them are used, not all of them, but I don't think it's going to help.
Lack of context.
Yeah, lack of context. Lack of context.
That's the words. Yeah, we're not dissing idioms in use. We're just trying to.
No, not at all.
Yeah, that it's just a lack of context. Just don't think that the context is this, right? For sure.
Yeah, exactly. It just needs more. But again, like we said, it's like it's like when we create our courses, right? I mean, when we put together programs, we could literally throw everything we know at the courses. We could put in everything. We could give so much English, 1,000 hours of videos, but then we'd have to charge 200,000 rubles for it, and no one's going to pay it. And you've got to find a golden middle. And these books do exactly the same. They can't. They try to give enough, to kind of get you going. It's not great, but then of course, if they were to provide absolutely everything in this book, you wouldn't need to do your course, you wouldn't need to do mine. You know, we wouldn't serve much purpose if textbooks or such things provided absolutely everything. That's the thing. And so there is a lot of sort of some financial motivation behind this.
Hmm.
That's the thing, and people need to understand it. But I think that like everyone here watching should understand that, like, you know, if you're ever unsure, ask yourself or ask me. It's absolutely fine, because it takes me 5 seconds to say no. We don't say it, or like say this one instead.
Sure. To conclude this question, of
Yes,
course,
mate.
know your idioms, use your idioms, but don't speak for the sake of phrases. Yeah, like phrases for the sake of phrases. The
Yeah,
notion, idea is key. Like in Russian, I mean, how often do you think of what to say and what idioms to use in Russian? Like when I'm talking to a casual guy, I'm like, okay, I will use this phrase to impress them, right? Who does that? No one does that, right? Same with English, same situation.
hmm.
But I would say, in my humble experience, I found that English is more idiomatic than Russian when it comes to
Oh, well.
speech. Okay, literally speech for sure. Russian is like the top dog. Okay, but
Hmm.
when it comes to like speaking casually, a lot of slang, a lot of phrasal verbs. By the way, which I think you can never go wrong with if you learn them correctly. Yeah, because phrasal verbs are
Absolutely.
right.
Yeah, phrasal verbs are not that difficult. You just need context. That's the thing. That's one of the reasons I started VK those years ago, because when
Mhm,
I was doing my research about which route I want to go, I was looking on communities, seeing lists of
mhm,
phrasal verbs without any examples, and it's like, they're useless. These posts are useless because, like, you're not going to learn anything. You
mhm,
know, like, you know, if you take the idiomatic phrasal verb crop up, you know, you like, I mean, you got to have the context that, you know, is used exclusively on its own without any meaning, without any information. Oh, something's cropped up. What? Well, you
mhm.
don't need to know. Cropped up is enough to say, I have to leave because something expected has arisen. And so a good book and a good source will give lots of examples. But again, one source isn't enough. You've got to go through many, like we've said. So I think people have got to understand that if they want to, firstly, master using idiomatic expressions, whether phrasal verbs, proverbs, binomials, cliches, whatever, um, I think the first thing is not to try too hard, and don't feel compelled that they have to throw idioms in. They will come over time,
Right.
through learning. They will come over time. Again, exposure is the most important one. So rather than sort of go through this book, you can do some of them, but then, you know, really focus on the real sources like your vlogs, your podcasts and
Right.
stuff, because those are where you're going to hear them again and again. It's like, well, that's it, done.
Explore as much as you can, and only
Yeah.
then make sure. By the way, inversion. See,
Exactly.
guilty as charged.
But that one is fine. With only is fine. That inversion's fine. Not only, but also.
Okay, thank you, Master. So, and only then can you make sure that you can spice it up if you want. Yeah, you spice your speech up with it. You know what? One more thing that we are all we all have an issue with, right? And like the problem of us Russians learning English is that most of us come from the Soviet Union when the teacher was, I would say, used to be, okay, this kind of pillar of the classroom. Yeah, the only role model to look up to. Things have changed, right? Now we have
Yeah.
so much to choose from. Yeah, so many resources and everything. And the teachers, yeah, they're all model of the classroom, but still someone can look things up. Yeah, Google them and say, like, you know what? I actually found the example that you said that was not okay to use, right? But what I mean is, we were always taught not to question the teacher and the book. You know, like whatever I'm saying to you
Yeah.
is the gospel truth, okay? And you're
Mhm.
supposed to just stick to it, no questions asked. Even this kind of questions, were not they were discouraged. Question asking was
Yeah.
discouraged, and it still kind of lingers, it still
It
lingers.
does.
Even with us, like with me, I'm 28 years old. I still remember when I was in school back in my last year at school, 2010. I remember teachers saying, like, are you questioning my
Jesus.
expertise? Huh? Are you
I finished school in 1995. That's embarrassing.
Yeah,
I'm so
yeah.
much older than you. But continue.
Yeah, you see, I mean, and I was like, I'm not questioning, I'm just asking questions. I want to
Yeah.
know more. I just want to know whether I can use it that way or this way. So we're afraid to ask questions. We're a bit frightened to like tarnish, you know, a teacher's reputation. Hence
Yeah.
the shyness, you know, hence the this like, you know, opinion that, you know, it's used that way. And also what I've noticed is that to make sure that our students also speak in a like, you know, this natural idiomatic way if needs be, we need to lead by example, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like, don't forget to use those idioms that you teach. Don't just teach them
Yes.
and next
Yeah.
class you start a new chapter, a new unit, and you don't use them. That's what I see all the time, you know, and I saw when
Exactly.
like
I
be the
completely
one,
agree.
yeah, be the one who uses them. So and that will also you know, like help them realize that it's used, that you use it, that will remind them of this phrase, you know. Yeah, everyone is talking about the
Exactly.
Latin book. Don't get me started. By
No,
the
I
way,
completely agree. I mean, it comes down to the teacher to do the job properly. You
mhm,
know, it's like you've got to plan your lessons. You've got to recycle language every so often through warm-ups or cool-downs. It has to be done. And again, it's like, you know, sort of recycle the same stuff every so often, purposely
right,
introduce it if the context is there.
hmm,
That just it comes down to being a competent teacher and being constantly aware of what you're doing.
right,
And assessing yourself. But yeah, I think this thing about not kind of questioning, I do agree with you. And I over my 15 years in Russia, I kind of noticed this as well, and I completely agree with you. And yeah, it comes from then. Therefore, like we said at the beginning, taking something on at face value. It comes from this, you know. Well, I've seen it written; it must be the gospel truth, you know. Or Cambridge Dictionary, or this Cambridge is amazing. If it's in Cambridge, it must be right. It's like, well, the people who write these things are in a little kind of Cambridge bubble, you know. And you'd be surprised if you gave such material to native speakers, like they'll be like, half of them would be like, no, no, no. Surprisingly, the other day, I was telling my speaking club students, I hate the binomial hustle and bustle. I hate it.
hmm,
I actually hate hustle and bustle. And I was like, how many times have you heard native speakers in general chatting say hustle and bustle? It's like, I'd like you to ask your American friends, because it's like, for me, hustle and bustle is one of those expressions like it's raining cats and dogs. We know it, but we don't use it, kind of thing. You know, we just don't. So hustle and bustle, but it's in textbooks. You
hmm,
will actually find it in a few textbooks to escape the hustle and bustle of city life. It's kind of thing, well, yes, it does exist like that, but there are better alternatives, like to escape the stress of city life. You know, and that would just be simpler, but yet more common. And so again, is when people sort of see things like this and actually then come across and say, well, we don't actually use it as often as you think. What? But Cambridge says so, or this book says we do. It's like, well, you know, take it with a pinch of salt. You know, really. Because again, from my personal experience, I went to university. I thought I was being taught right. I thought I was being taught like real German. But like you said earlier, when I went there, I could not even say, where do I weigh the apples? You
hmm,
know, I could talk about culture and politics. I couldn't, when someone was pouring gravy on my potatoes, I couldn't say, how do I say in German, that's enough? And like, I'm trying to figure out how my brain is just drowning my potatoes in gravy. Das reicht. You know, and so it's about this kind of sort of real English that we really want to kind of bring over to our students. Now, I understand, you know, to get real authentic English is difficult, lower levels. But that's why I think, you know what, invest in a good teacher. Really invest in a good teacher that knows what they're doing, and you will be absolutely fine. And you're not going to have to pay twice, meaning second time you're going to have to pay for someone to correct your English.
right.
That's the thing.
Totally agree. And again, a good teacher is also, you know, a dime a dozen these days, right? So you should really be aware, yeah, of who you're choosing. And when it comes to vlogs, I think it's important to, you know, when you choose a teacher, to make sure they speak spontaneously in their stories and videos and everything. Yeah, that's it. It's not
Mhm.
speech only. This is how you see that they actually practice what they preach, you know? So
Yeah,
very important. By the way,
it's really true.
we have
It's
a few
really
more
true.
questions. One of them
Yes,
is,
mate.
at what age or level should a teacher start explaining students how to use idioms?
God, how long's a piece of string? Uh,
Which is another great idiom, right? By the
it
way,
is,
what do you
isn't it?
think, guys, it means? What does the phrase mean? How long is a piece of string? Let us know in the comment section.
Yeah.
So, Paul,
Yeah.
what do you have to say on this one anyway?
Um, well, the funny thing is that people seem to think idioms are some kind of separate entity, like lexically. But even from beginner's level, like how are you doing? That's actually a kind of idiomatic expression, and there are so many that just appear without knowing they're actually idioms. I mean, I would say start immediately. Of course, I wouldn't say to a beginner like, how long's a piece of string, or like, not particularly my cup of tea, but you're going to kind of introduce them from pretty early on. But people just don't realize that they are idioms. It's just part and parcel. There's idioms that are so frequent at low level to like proverbial idioms at high level. You just start pretty much immediately, I would say. You
Mm,
know,
yeah, like try to like start injecting this little by little, yeah. Maybe from
yeah,
two, maybe B1 is better because
yeah,
they still have to learn their way around word combinations, collocations, right? So
yeah.
chunks,
I agree with that. I agree because I actually teach based on the mantra: first acquire skill, creativity comes later,
right,
and I really follow this.
right.
Despite what a lot of other teachers think. And so, I mean, I would teach maybe one or two idiomatic expressions to beginners for fun, like, like, I don't know, like always, I don't know, like, I can't think of an example. There's 25,000 of them,
What are
but
you up,
like,
what are you up to? What have you been up to lately?
oh,
Yeah.
what have you been up to exactly? So it's like a fixed expression. So to add some juice, to add some ooh la la to your elementary class, what have you been up to? What were you up to on Saturday? Kind of thing. And so something cool to say, this is very English, like kind of cool English, And then as you get like more advanced through like B1, B2, then you start throwing loads of them at your
Exactly,
students kind of thing.
exactly. Because this is functional language. And again, as we
Yeah.
mentioned at the beginning of the live stream, those functional language phrases, yeah, or collocations, word combinations, they're also part of phraseology. They are the
Yeah.
idiom, not the proverbs, you know? They are. And also, I believe, but I kind of did that subconsciously until this lexical approach hit the big time, is learning phrases in chunks, in those, like
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
chunk,
Must.
yeah, like, those word combinations with grammar embedded, so to say,
Yeah.
right? Because what we forget about idioms, by the way, this is an interesting thing to add, is that we usually learn the initial form of an idiom. You mentioned that with have a bone to pick with, but what I'm trying to say is that we kind of learn the phrase. For example, tough love is one of those phrases
Hmm.
I taught, yeah? Where
Yeah.
like, okay, give tough love, yeah? Or just tough love. But how do I use that? Yeah, like,
Hmm.
I will give you tough love. Yeah, legs
That's the
context.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly,
If someone,
exactly.
right. And if someone starts speaking to you in a way that you don't like and starting like, I don't know, giving you, lecturing you, you could say, listen, spare me the tough love talk, okay? Yeah. And that becomes beautiful. Again, not only again beautiful, but also that's like the way you can use it. Yeah, like spare me this, spare me your lecture, right? Or maybe like you are in for a tough love if she finds out, yeah, what you did, something like
Hmm.
that, right? So this is where we explore in those resources and when we ask natives. But we should
Hmm.
definitely have our own, like, bunch of pocket native speakers, to ask,
Yeah, yeah.
because sometimes when I'm in doubt, I do ask you, Paul, that I sometimes bombard you with
Hmm.
lots of questions.
Hmm.
And I ask some Americans and Australians the same question, the same wording of the question, but I always get different answers. And then, being a linguist, yeah, being an interpreter, I kind of, just put two and two together and realize that, okay, so this is the golden medium, yeah. This is
Hmm.
how I can use it. This is like something that I needed, right? So one native
Hmm.
would not be enough. It wouldn't suffice for sure.
Absolutely, absolutely. Like it's same if I was to ask Russians, it's like whenever I speak to Russians about some kind of expression, or even like when I had my students together, like one Russian comes out with some Russian phrase or an idiom, and a lot of Russians, I've never heard of this. I've never heard of this, and I'm like, okay, I'm kind of left none the wiser. And then I just kind of ask more Russians, do you say this? So the majority says yes. Okay, I'll take it as a yes then, and I'll start using it, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so it really is about kind of exploring a bit more and over time, when the hard work has been invested, it does pay off
Mm-hmm.
in the future.
Agreed.
Because again, you'll start to hear the frequency of it being repeated again and again. And I think people need to sort of understand that it's just a process that goes on until our last breath. It's a simple way that there is no, I think people like want to say, okay, how many idioms should I learn a day? Or how many idioms should I know by this time? It's like saying that in language, there's some kind of stop off point, but there isn't. Like no native knows all of them. You know, and a lot of natives have their own personal uses or certain idioms. Between I would say between the English-speaking countries, about 80% would be the same. But then there are quite a few that are different, with quite a few variations as well. I understand nearly all of them in context, not all. Yeah, it's something that I don't even know all of them. I've even gone through like this book, and even like one or two that like I've come across. I'm like, I've never seen that before. You know, I do think this advanced one is a lot more simplistic than it used to be. A lot more simplistic kind of thing. But like even to say, like, oh, he's a tower of strength. No, well, we just don't kind of say it very often. And so, but then maybe some native speakers do. So fundamentally, people got to understand that like it is a difficult area. It's more complex than people realize. A lot more complex. And so what we kind of literally saying throughout the streaming is that, guys, it's not black and white. It's really complex. And and that's the fun part of it, about, you know, investigating, looking at different sources, asking people, inquiring, you know, and it really fuels your imagination and this kind of passion to learn English and to actually improve it. Because like what you were doing about consulting different sources, whether it's your friends or like online dictionaries or whatever, I saw it's based on something I saw the other day. It was about bilingualism, and it's about like how some people can learn a second language quicker than others. So why, or even if it's about just learning a general L2, why do some people pick up languages much quicker than others? And some people say, oh, I'm not like genetically predisposed to learn languages, which is complete rubbish, by the way. Some people just do it right first time. You know, some people end up just learning languages wrong in a long-winded way. You know, that's the thing. Like my German could have been a lot quicker if I'd been taught properly to begin with, and maybe pushed and maybe encouraged. And that's why. So, like with the idiomatic expressions, that's why, based on what we've said to everyone, if you do it right the first time, well, you're going to learn a lot quicker and save yourself a lot of pain and anguish in the future.
For sure. You know what? It made me think of German as well, because it's my second foreign language. You know, I majored in German too. But what I got to tell you is we did have quite, you know, we had a few good German teachers, really good. They're not native speakers, but they're good, inspiring. But we didn't feel the idiomacy of the German language because we never watched stuff on our own. We were not exposed. So I couldn't understand whether Donnerwetter was a good way to say, like, you know, but then only when I came to Cyprus and I met a few Germans and a few Swiss people, they told me, gosh, don't say that, or don't say it. You know, it's like, it sounds too old-fashioned. I'm like,
I had that almost every day I lived in Germany, and it was heartbreaking. Don't say this. We don't use it like that. It's like, what do you use then? Kind of thing. Yeah, it's tough.
It's tough, but again, that's why we have reason, and we have the mind, and we have help around. We have one more question from Valentina. She's, by the way, speaking of how long is a piece of string, you did answer. I'm going to read them out to you, Paul. You are going to let us know whether they're correct or not. Tatiana says, it means how much time do we have? I think it's wrong. Yeah, it's not about that. Then up to no good. No. Then go bananas. Again, if it's about what you meant, then no. As far as I know, if someone says, when you ask a question and you're like, how long is a piece of string? As far as I know, it means like, I don't know the definite answer, right?
Yeah, correct.
I don't know. I mean, like, how long is that? Beats me. Yeah. You know? So
Exactly. That's how we use it. So like if someone asks a question and it's a very vague question, or maybe it's there's no definitive answer, it's very hard to put your finger on them and say, how long is a piece of string? So it's like, what do you think makes people happy? How long is a piece of string? I mean, there are millions of things, you know. it's hard to pinpoint it. So yeah, it's very, very common as well. Very common.
Yeah, but I've heard it from the British speakers mostly. Is that correct? It's more of a British way of saying.
It might be, yes, it might be. It might be. Because the funny thing is that like, even for me as an Englishman, because I know that you have a lot of American contacts. I've got a couple. But the funny thing is that like, I make it clear, like my VK page and other places, when I teach English, I'm doing the British version. Because sometimes people say, do they say this in America? I don't know. You know, like, I don't know. I mean, again, the English is like universal among all English speaking countries. There are, of course, differences, like small differences, I would say. Grammatically, it's almost identical. Like a few of the differences are kind of tiny. Language wise, like lexically, yeah, there are some differences, especially in regional variations when it comes to idiomatic expressions. So if I went to some like small town in central Idaho, I'd be like, what the hell? You know, like maybe they say some idioms. I've never heard of that. And sometimes we have the same idioms, but we change some nouns to have some kind of variation. But we kind of understand each other. But yeah, so that's the thing. So even with me, it's like, you know, in Australia, Jamaica, New Zealand, there are going to be some kind of differences. And so even with me, like when I was going through this book, doing this project, making these videos, I'm like, it's not very useful because I'm talking about me as a Brit. But if you're going to go to America, then it's useless. You know, because, you know, some Americans are going to say, no, we do say this, he's wrong, kind of thing. And again, it confuses learners even more. So what is right then, kind of thing. So it is very, very, very difficult. So the only conclusion that we can make from this, like we've said so many times today, exposure, constant exposure.
Agreed. By the way, Alex, one of your followers, greeted you by saying, what's cooking good looking? Would you say that? Or is it more of an American?
It's definitely that's a very nice compliment, Alex. Yeah, I would say it's more American and it's kind of very playful.
Agreed.
It's like, see you in a while, crocodile. See you later, alligator, in a while, crocodile, kind of thing. It's kind of like that, but it's very sweet.
Yeah, agreed. By the way, also Julia asks, can we use this phrase, how long is a piece of string, in CPE speaking?
Well, yeah, it depends on the question. Where are you from? How long's a piece of string?
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, the flag.
Yeah, like if you were doing the part 2 collaborative task, and you know you're having your kind of discussion, and someone asks a question like, well, like, what do you think is the meaning of art in this picture? Well, how long's a piece of string? I mean, it can be interpreted in like myriad of ways, you know. So it'd be perfect to use like that. Absolutely.
Natural is the word.
It's
right?
natural. It's natural. And also the other thing with the right intonation, that's key as well. That's absolute key. Intonation. Well, how long is a piece of string? You know, how long is a piece of string? And it must be like that.
It's like the same with the phrase, I would hate for you to leave. Or if someone says,
yes.
I would hate for some, you know, for some, that if something happens to your area, something like that.
Yeah, I would say very sarcastic. Yeah. I would hate for you to have an accident.
Right. Yeah, which means you're threatening. But
yes,
if you say, I would hate for you to be miserable, just come over, let's have a beer. You know?
Yes, exactly. It's like with question tags, it's the same thing. Like with my daughter, it's like, oh, you're a good girl, aren't you, my darling? You're a good girl, aren't you, my darling? Meaning, listen to your daddy and don't do it again. You know, intonation is underestimated in language learning, in my opinion.
Yes, and it
really is underestimated.
Idioms, when it comes to idioms, it changes meaning. So one of the other questions, you know what? We have a lot of questions for you, Paul, so just bear with us.
Sure, mate.
Another question is, Valentina asks, I heard that only educated native speakers know how to use idioms. Others primarily use slang expressions. Is that true that only educated native speakers know how to use idioms and use idioms?
No, not at all.
Are idioms about education, is the question?
No. Well, educated people probably know more, you know, because they read more and maybe watch different sources. So they're like an educated native speaker knows by the time they die about 40,000 lexical chunks. And a lot of those are idioms.
Right.
So an educated person is naturally going to know more than someone who's not. But again, there are idioms for even uneducated people. And a lot of slang lexical chunks are idiomatic expressions as well for slang, you know. Right. So they probably use, I get it, this is very anecdotal. I'm sort of shooting in the dark here, but I would say no. The uneducated do use a lot of idioms as well, probably just fewer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just more slang or just some combinations of words, right? Same with
Well, slang is not always. Also, the funny thing, people need to understand slang is used in every register. You know, it's not about like educated people use less slang. It's just a matter of taste. Even uneducated people can be quite reserved or conservative and just not want to use them. You know, I know educated people who get drunk and go crazy and use slang. It's just about switching between register, depending on the situation. So it's like slang. The two don't broach, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Good answer. Thank you so much. Maria asks, Paul, what do you think about Cambridge exams like CAE and CPE? Are the candidates expected to use natural English or a bunch of sophisticated vocab?
Right. Okay. This is a tough one, right? And I'll explain why. Because I specialize in these exams, and in the teacher's handbook, it actually says that for a CPE and an A, a CPE, or an A at CAE, it actually says a student is supposed to handle complexity with sophistication and accuracy. And then you actually, well, what does sophistication mean here? What does it mean?
Mm-hmm.
Accuracy, understand, don't make mistakes.
Yeah, yeah.
But sophistication, well, that's very subjective as what does sophistication entail?
Mm-hmm.
Basically, in like the CAE and CPE, you've got to use relatively complex language, but it's more about being natural because honestly, it's about making sense more than anything. So you answer the questions, you make sense. So you could use like some big idiomatic expressions. It's like great for your range, not bad, but appropriacy, zero, because they just don't work. And it's very difficult to follow what you're saying because you sound too philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you're making no sense. So you will suffer. So it's about finding a golden middle. The one thing I will say about the Cambridge exams, one thing that most students lack is the topical vocabulary. So it's like if you're talking about the environment, you should know some expressions or complex nouns for the environment. If you're talking about like work, you should know things like part-time shift work, night shift, generous redundancy package. Rather than, you know, sort of paraphrase around there. So that's the thing that students need to focus on most, in my opinion. You know, those themes that you have, you got to know vocabulary for art, traveling, all that kind of stuff. That's the most important. But it's not about, like we said at the beginning, throwing words like moribund or phantasmagoric. You know, you're not going to get points for that unless it works in a natural context. So it really is about being natural. So again, honestly, less is more. It really is, less is more.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point you're making. So it looks like the word appropriacy and register are just like woven into the fabric of our conversation today. They're
Yes.
like, you see? By the way, good that you asked that because in my previous live stream, I did talk about exams and what I've noticed, like this slight bone I have with you know, to pick with exams is, don't you think that sometimes getting ready for CPE or CE, like, you know, making a special point, yeah, to always rummage through those books and learn the vocabulary and focus too much, it sometimes rubs off in the wrong way. As in, like, sometimes we think that if CPE says this is the language to use, we're supposed to use it. And obviously, you know, the book is something to trust. Don't you think that it affects our understanding of how to use English in everyday life? That's my question.
Yeah. Yeah, I think those books are very misleading, extremely misleading. I think it's just like a continual process of just acquiring vocabulary and language, all sorts, and to the most sort of natural application possible. I think just to go back to your question, are you saying that you would actually not trust these books? Is that what you mean?
No. I mean, for example, Stan decided to get ready for CPE, finally, at last.
Right.
Yeah. Starts learning all the vocabulary from CPE, and Stan gets this idea that to pass CPE and to hold this prominent certificate and always be up to the task, Stan is supposed to speak in the language CPE suggests.
Oh, right. I see what you mean. I see what you mean. Okay. I understand what you mean. I actually have some personal qualms of this as well, right? Because when you look at, like, we had this chat before about high time. Do you remember?
Oh,
that native speakers never use it, and they don't, by the way. They almost never do. You might hear it once or twice, but generally every day we're about like it's about time we went. That would be more natural. However, it could appear in a CAE use of English, so
exactly.
you have to know. That's the thing. So you have to even inversion. You know, I mean, I like inversion with only or some negation, but not hardly or seldom with those adverbials. You know, but you need to know them because they will ask you about these in a use of English part 4 sentence transformation. And so even, for example, like when you write essays, you know, like even for CPE, like the kind of essays you write for the part 1 discursive essay, it just seems so artificial, you know, and what you're supposed to do. And I think Cambridge are somehow really out of date where this is concerned. But then the question is, okay, how do you find a golden middle that is able to assess everyone in a similar way around the entire world? That's the thing. That's the thing. And I think it's about them trying to sort of find this kind of golden middle that can appeal to everyone. I mean, because the funny thing is you write these essays, but no one writes essays anymore in real life. You know, like writing a letter to a friend is like, I'll text maybe 20 words to my friend about it, or leave a voice message. And maybe that's what should replace essays, recorded voice messages or something. But like, yeah, the English that is often required for these exams, there is something not real about it, I would say. It's still a good source of language. Like, you know, you sort of, it's like what I learned at university. It's like what I learned at university in preparation for Germany, in the sense that I could talk about politics, economics, culture, film. These kind of exams are kind of quite similar where those are concerned, but they're not, and they're kind of more sort of gearing towards the academic side, but it's about real everyday life. They don't touch it.
Exactly. So the only problem, the only issue I have with exams is that, no, two issues. I think we should bring it up a little bit, you know? The first one is that do not forget that, of course, you have to know this language. If you are first a teacher who teaches adults, who teach high levels, and who wants to be up to the task, who wants to be a class act, first. Second, it's for the passive knowledge. When you watch, when you read, you will come across those phrases. But again, it doesn't mean that you have to use them all the time. So we shouldn't forget the fact that we do not speak in CPE language all the time. I mean, we don't do that if it were for Russian and in English as well.
Yeah.
And second, the second bone to pick with, that's probably wrong to say, but artistically, yeah, if I take artistic liberty using this phrase, I would say, would be that I don't really like it when teachers start preparing for exams and start cramming for exams. I think it's wrong. The exam is supposed to test your current language. Current. If you're B2 or you are, I don't know, B1 and you want to, and you're aiming for a C1 and you start cramming, I think it's wrong. Okay? I'm stoned for that right now. Okay? I'm already kind of getting, but that's my understanding of this. For example, if I were to take the exam right now, yeah, for some academic purposes or for moving house to England, to America, I would do this. But I would go for just, you know, study the format, make sure you know all the intricacies, yeah, take it up with Paul and then go and pass it. Yeah, take it and pass it. Yeah, not just like I need to learn all of the CPE phrases or wordings. I think that's wrong. So that's the only problem. Like you're trying, we say it in Russian, натаскивание. I don't like this idea when you're trying to натащить этот уровень. Yeah, when you're B2 or B1, you're trying to take C1 or C2. Okay, this is an unpopular opinion. I know that, but this is my 2 cents.
I think there are 2 ways about it. I can support your side and I support the other side. So on one side, there are students who, like, especially with IELTS, because a lot of schools run intensive IELTS for like a month. It's about getting used to the format. And I've done that with CAE and CPE as well. I used to do some summer courses where it's like 1 month CAE, I'm going to quickly show you how to write. We're not going to have much chance of practice, but like your English is already there. You just need to know precisely how to do the exam with practice tests. So that's one side. The other side is that there are a lot of people who are so unsure about their English that they do need the time to be guided. So they do need to write regularly. They need to be checked. They need to do it again. They need to hand them in. They've got personal commitments. So they can't say cram within, say, and I do disagree with cramming. I think it's a bad idea because I understand cramming to learn a lot in a short space of time, but it should be spaced out over like months and months and months and months and months. where things are done gradually and properly. So not like working hard, but working smart.
Right.
It's about like building up the skills, because like when you do the format for the CPE speaking or the CAE Part 3 speaking, it's really difficult to get students to like meld together to do a collaborative task, to teach them how to listen attentively and to actually pass over the conversation in natural ways. It actually takes a huge amount of practice.
Agreed.
And so, yeah, there are people that actually want to be guided who maybe have issues with the English, and actually over a period of 6 months to a year do make a huge amount of progress and they're ready. But then, like for your side, there are people who have the English and they need to kind of do an exam quickly. I want to get it done. So I actually support both sides, because if I didn't do the former, I'd be out of business big time. And yeah, and I do agree that I don't like the fact that they say there are CAE expressions that you have to use. I disagree that there's just English you have to use, whether it's CAE or not. There's just English to make yourself sound natural. I can actually tell you what's very interesting. Again, I've developed another recent dislike of something big time. And my exam students know this. They really know this. You know, like you see this like everywhere on VK, people post these like copy and pasted posts from other sources. Well, they make their own. You know these phrases when you're having a discussion. Do you agree? I agree. What do you think? I see your point. I've banned my students from using them now. All these kind of idiomatic expressions. I've banned them. It's so artificial and it's so often used so wrong. No native speaker, do you agree? I completely agree. Maybe once. Do you agree? Yeah. Or do you agree? Well, a bit, I suppose, but
sure.
And then I kind of tell my students the best way is like, okay, I think everyone should become vegetarian because it's the best way to save animals and the planet. And then I say, don't say I disagree. Just argue by using context, thrown back at them. Well, surely not everyone can be vegetarian because meat contains essential proteins and minerals that the body needs. Well, yeah, but I'm saying that like it's not going to maybe suit everyone, but certainly to the population to a large extent. Yeah, but that's kind of tantamount to fascism, you know. That's the natural way to have a discussion in CA or CPE without constantly saying, what's your stance? What's your point on that? Do you see what I'm getting at? It's really started to irritate me so much kind of thing. So I've taken those CAE words out.
It's like using phrases for the sake of phrases. Yeah, that's for sure. You know what?
Yeah.
It's a lifelong term. It's a lifelong skill to learn for us non-natives, for everyone, because we sometimes don't feel this fine line. Yeah, we still want to be. I mean, when you take an exam, right, and when you really pass it successfully, of course you want to retain most of those phrases. You want to use them. You want to make sure that you did it for something, not just like for nothing, right? But again, the keyword here is appropriacy. Yeah, and of course the register.
Yeah.
Maria asks Stan, by saying cram for C1, what kind of time frame are you talking about? Not the time frame. I think you have it backwards a little bit. What I mean is, I don't like it when you're, for example, just let's take a stereotypical person. They are B1. Their level is B1, but they want to take and pass CAE, which is C1. And what they do is they start learning the language to make sure they pass it successfully, this exam. I think it's a bit wrong. You're supposed to make sure that you take care of your language first, right? And then when you're ready, dive into the intricacies of the example, study English and exam format with Paul, because this is what Paul is amazing at as well.
Right? Oh, thank you very much.
All the ins and outs of it, like no doubt. And
yeah.
By writing those essays, by doing some activities, you are wrapping your head around those this format. That's what I meant. Not like trying to learn all of the phrases that those CE lists suggest or whatever. But
yeah,
one,
I agree.
Yeah, or C1-ish, and trying to make sure that you know your way around the format, and then go take it. Right? Don't be two and take C2. That's my bone.
Yeah.
I'm already rhyming my English with my English.
It's true. I mean, basically, if you're talking about the time required, CEFR says C1, C2 is about 144 hours, if I'm not mistaken. But again, theoretically, depending on how many hours you can invest, that could be anything between 6 months and 9 months to prepare for CAE or CPE. My courses last like 6 months, but then they do. Students do go over them, which is absolutely fine. So it depends on your personal commitments. Well, again, how long's a piece of string? You know, how much time did it take to prepare? Well, what are your personal commitments?
Exactly.
You know, do you have a job? Do you have a family to look after? How much time can you invest every day? Kind of thing. And so that's why you should be shown how to do it, and then you can continue doing it yourself and take as much time as you need.
You know what? The teachers that come to your courses are the teachers that I know mostly, and they're really good. There's no question about their level, initial level. So what they come to you for is the format and a bit of English. That's for sure. So in this case, you're not to blame. I'm just talking about the notion, yeah, of taking an exam. Those exams are aimed at assessing your current language, yeah, your current level, not the level you're going to cram for. Let's put it that way, yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Because it's like a one moment. It's like it's not like IELTS where it's like across the board. For CAE, they're testing you for C1. They don't care how long you've spent preparing for it. It tests you for that particular level, like right there. So yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and also Jana mentions idiotic expressions. Sometimes you may sound idiotic if you use them incorrectly. Correct. You know,
idiomatic expressions. There are many of them.
Yeah,
kind of thing. Do you know? By the way, do you know the expressions I really hate? I hate when people say it's not my cup of tea. I'm tired of that. And also, people often say it is my cup of tea. It's never used, by the way, in an affirmative sentence. It's never used in affirmatively. It's like, it is my cup of tea. You might see one or two examples online, but this is when people say, I found an online use, Paul. Check the author. Are they native? I don't know. Well, I doubt it, kind of thing, because it's never used, it's always used as a way to negate politely. Well, you know, would you like to go bowling? Well, bowling is not really my cup of tea. Because actually, it's only used about activities and personal tastes, nothing else. And so it's very interesting. I would never see, like, say, Coca-Cola is not my cup of tea. It just doesn't work. We wouldn't use it like that.
What would
you know?
It's not my thing, or what?
You can say it's not my thing. Yeah, it's a synonym. It's even more common. It's not my thing. That's what I would say. It's not my thing.
So you see, when it comes to creating a course book, I think one of the problems is that, you know, people who create it are a bit older than the ones who are going to be learning from it. Yeah. I mean, we're aiming at teenagers, sometimes adults, but the people who create it could be, like, for example, in their 40s, 50s. I have nothing against age. I know we're all going to get on a bit, right? As they say. What I mean is, the language my mom speaks is, of course, a bit different from the language I speak. I mean, Russian, right? The language my grandma speaks is a bit different. But if they create the course book, they will use the expressions they get to hear and say a lot. But we're going to teach youngsters mostly, right? And it means that the language sometimes will be a little bit different from what a typical British teenager would say, yeah, or American teenager. You see?
Of course, that's why I think that, like, you know, as we said, when you get to like B2 level, real sources, they outdo textbooks. Textbooks become redundant. Even at C1 level, I mean, there are a few books out there, but honestly, they just become redundant. It's really mastering your English from real authentic sources. Like, you know, native speakers, like, say, podcasts, vlogs, whatever, because books just don't do C1 and C2 level justice anymore. That's the thing. And again, even if some of these authors of textbooks and reference books, you know, if they try to appeal to different age groups, again, they'd be encyclopedias. It's impossible. It's impossible to publish such information. It's too much, and it'd be too expensive, and no one would buy them. Or you'd probably be illegally downloadable on VK the next day anyway. But like, yeah. So that's the thing. It's extremely difficult, and you know, we can finish off by saying that what is interesting about this is the underestimation of the complexities of English, because I often hear how, like, English is an easy language. Yeah, really? Well, we've just kind of mentioned how difficult it actually is to be appropriate in language use, about being accurate, about, like, you know, confirming source. It's really difficult. And I think people should embrace that. And I think there's nothing wrong with it. And I think it's fantastic. And I would say to everyone, enjoy the process, whether they're going to do Cambridge exams or whatever kind of thing. I would say whatever they're going to choose to do, just enjoy the ride, you know. And, you know, because when people ask a lot of the questions that I get, the questions are in the tone of punishment, you know, as if I'm punishing myself, or like I'm scared of, like, approaching idioms. Like, why would you be? Kind of thing, you know. It's about having the right mindset of this desire, this passion of seeing English as a part of their life and wanting to better themselves, about their furtherment, their betterment in every aspect. And I think it should be embraced and celebrated. Rather than like this imposter syndrome and putting people down because then they're going to avoid idioms. Oh, it is hard. I'd rather not bother, kind of thing. So there we go.
Exactly. Paul, we're going to keep you for just another 10 minutes because we have really two good questions, okay? First of them is, what do you think about the lexical approach, Maria asks?
I've always been asked this question. I'm always asked this question. I agree with it. I agree. There's one or two things I would criticize. I mean, again, I teach the lexical approach. I follow it. Like even my speaking club is completely the lexical approach. I just have contextualized examples, big chunks of language. So rather than just a list of vocab, everything is written in a paragraph as if I'm speaking to give you context to use it in a chunk. So I follow it completely. I like when, for example, teaching grammar, and teaching grammar in a way that, like, rather than just say like this is must or have to, whatever, and trying to teach the intricacies of how they're different, they're basically the same. It's better to actually have a lot of fixed expressions to use which are frequent in English with the right tone. So I support the lexical approach completely. I do support other approaches as well, because I think a teacher should have an arsenal. They should have a toolbox of everything. Depending on the student, depending on the circumstances. As I said before, I do believe in acquiring skill first, creativity comes later. So I think there is no harm in knowing the rules of grammar because it trains your brain cognitively. It makes you very analytical. And I think that's a very, very good thing to do as well, because I do believe in when you learn a language, like within anything that you do, you've got to understand what you're doing. You have to. So, because I can honestly say that when I was learning German in England many years ago, I could not progress because I didn't understand English well enough. I didn't know all the rules in English. So I just didn't understand them in German until I kind of bought a book in the local bookshop in London. And I sat down and thought, that's a noun, that's a verb, at the age of 16. And then my German suddenly progressed. So I think people should really understand what they're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that, because I know some advocates of the lexical approach, you don't need to know the rules. But I think it's good too. There's nothing wrong in that. It's interesting. People want to understand how it works. But at the same time, follow the lexical approach, because I think it's a great thing. So I prefer to be that kind of teacher who likes the best of both worlds, so to speak.
Exactly. As a teacher, you get to choose what to teach with. Yeah, what teaching tools to use. As a teacher, you're supposed to have your own mental mind map of learning language and teaching language, right? So I am up for lexical approach. That's what I've been doing, again, as I said, even before it hit big time, the name, and the marketing thing. But I'm also up for eclecticism, like a bit of this, a bit of that, a bit of textbook thing. I mentioned in the previous live stream that I love some of the supplementary activities, some of the speaking tasks, some of the, like pair up activities, for sure. Very good, very good. But I just feel a little bit like, unconfident in this frame of a textbook. Like it's like a mold for me.
Absolutely. Because I think a teacher who goes into the classroom with only the textbook every lesson is making a very big mistake. Because I even throughout my career, I've had lessons where I just don't use the textbook. I even think that looks rubbish. I'm not going to do it. I'll do my own thing instead. Absolutely. Again, it's as teachers, we need to be aware of every aspect of the job. It's like, it's like, for example, like if you're going to fly in a plane with a pilot, you don't want him just to be able to do one particular thing, one particular way. Anyone, if he end up crashing, you want to know that he can deal with absolutely every aspect of his job, kind of thing, So it's not just about the lexical approach for us. It's about everything. Teaching psychology, which I'm a big advocate of, by the way. It's about methodology. It's about, and of course, knowing your English, because it's our product. You've got to sell your product, so you've got to know your English damn well.
Approve this message for sure. Last question before I call it today for today. We've been talking a bit about idioms in use, and the books that lack context and lack appropriacy sometimes, but actually, is there any book that you could still recommend to at least use as some sort of a beacon? For example, I love Collocations for Natural Use. the British book, the blue one. I don't remember the author because I'm really bad with names. But collocations for natural English are amazing because they include all of those aspects and categories of idioms that I mentioned at the beginning. Not just fixed expressions, also, binomials, some of
Mm,
the word combinations, proverbs too, slang, and they're good. They're placed in context. You can easily
yeah.
work it out. What would your go-to book be, though, if it's not
For
idiom? Good
That's a
question,
tough
right?
question because I usually do my own stuff. That's the thing. I use some books as references. Okay, if I had to choose a book, I mean, the collocations in use, that if you're talking about the Cambridge ones, like the phrasal verbs in use, even like this one, again, I wouldn't say it's useless. It's not the best, but they're certainly better than a lot of other stuff because they do give, because these ones have been updated, so they're not as bad as they used to be. That's a fact.
Mm,
Um, they are relatively, I mean, the phrasal verbs in use, vocabulary in use, collocations in use are good ones. They're much better than they used to be. And I would say, as long if you're going up to B2, those are the go-to books for your vocab. If you are not going to do real sources, which is
mm,
what I would recommend, kind of
mhm,
thing. Grammar books, grammar reference books. I like my Grammar Lab. I like Michael Swan, and especially his diagnostics books. My Grammar Scan. I like that a lot.
mhm.
Um, and which is hard to get in Russia, by the way. It's really hard to get. And uh, I used to like Michael Winsman, not much anymore. But yeah, my Grammar Lab would be my go-to one for grammar. But yeah, the Cambridge books are really not that bad at all because they've been updated. Because before I used collocations in use with the CAE group like about 10 years ago, gave them like some units like every couple of lessons, and like it proved completely useless.
Mhm.
I tend to use it sparingly, so to
Mm,
speak,
mm.
because I rely on my own stuff. That's the thing.
So the conclusion is use whatever you feel like using, but just take it with a pinch of salt. Yeah, explore more,
Absolutely.
ask around, make sure it's used a lot, make sure you understand the register, your way around it. And still, last minute question. I'm sorry to keep you, Paul, for
It's
such
fine.
a long time. Maria says, I liked the question about Paul's favorite TV series. I think I missed it. What is your favorite TV series so far or generally to watch? What would you recommend people to watch in English?
Right. Okay. If people like vulgar comedy, well, okay. If we're talking about British slang, I love the TV series The Inbetweeners, about
I
teenage
know.
boys. Yeah, I like that. The Inbetweeners. I like Father Ted. I like the IT Crowd.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I like some of the. I prefer some of the older ones. You know, Red Dwarf from the 1990s, great British comedy. Modern ones, there are so many of them. I do like Big Bang Theory,
Mm-hmm. A lot of play and
the
words
American one.
with the phrases,
Yeah, a lot of them, a lot.
puns.
I do like Peaky Blinders. I like some of that kind of stuff. So there's quite a few TV series that I like. I do like watching TED Talks very often because I
Mm-hmm.
like some of the things that people bring up. But again, TED Talks is good for vocabulary, but again, it's done in a very theatrical kind of way. That's what I find interesting about TED Talks. Like, it's got good topical vocabulary. That's what I like
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of done in a very theatrical way. So it's not like everyday conversational English.
Right.
So yeah, and also one of my favorite series. It will be hard for people to watch, but it's actually a podcast by Ricky Gervais. He's a British comedian who actually hosted the Golden Globes, caused controversy in America. And he has like he had a radio show called Ricky Gervais XFM, like about 5 seasons, like hundreds of hours of English of talking to someone really stupid about stuff. And they even did some Ricky Gervais podcasts about different themes. It's just hilariously funny,
Mm.
hilarious,
Cool.
and it's real conversational English, real English. So it'd be the absolute best one there. So I'd recommend that. But it's tough because there's nothing visual in a lot of it. You just have to listen to it.
Mm-hmm. You know what I think we should do just to wrap it up? Like after the live stream, when we have time to make a post with those like operative statements that we made here, yeah, and
Yeah,
discussed, and also include some of the links for sure. I think that would
yeah,
be a great idea,
absolutely,
right? Because that
absolutely.
is, you know what, Paul? By the way, it's my first live stream with someone and with someone that prominent, and
I'm not
important.
prominent. I'm no difference to anyone else. I just do my job, and it's like you're my guru online, mate. So don't worry.
I mean, I feel so honored to start it off with you. You know, I think you're like, it's like a blessing for further live streams. So I would really like to thank you so much for dropping so much knowledge on us today. You know, like so many
Well, thank you
insights.
very much for inviting me. I mean, you and me are a good team, mate. We've been together, like, not like that, but we've been together for many, many years. And yeah, afterwards, that's English after dark. Yeah, we kind of like helped each other out for many, many years. You know, we've got a very good bond going, and I really appreciate that kind of thing. So it's been a pleasure. I'd happily do some more streamings with you again in the future.
Agreed. We should just choose a topic. Maybe you guys could choose a topic and just suggest it under the post that we'll make.
Yeah.
I mean, more streams to come. I felt so comfortable, you know, sitting with you. It's as if like, I mean, time went by. It's been like what, 90 minutes already? Can you believe
Really?
that?
Jesus.
Right. And by the way, the guys are saying to you, thank you so much. You're so amazing. You're so amazing, Paul. You know, Paul, you're such a
you guys are
person.
amazing too.
Everyone is, I'm sure. All of you are, because today is Christmas in Russia and you're sticking to us.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I forgot about that.
There's been like more
Happy
than
Christmas.
50 people present. Gosh, that's great. Thank you so much. Please,
That's
guys,
nice.
make sure you watch it. If you watch it in recording, also leave your comments, ideas, thoughts. Because again, whatever we're talking about here is not the gospel truth. It's our own 2 cents.
Yeah, just our experience and opinions. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much, Paul.
Okay, take it easy, mate.
Okay.
Okay, bye-bye, guys. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. Bye.